forward. And another report called Foreclosed, State of the Dream, 2008, I handed out. This report is actually 50-something pages, so I just made a copy of the first few pages. But I think it's important to just start with a couple of statistics, because when we have this conversation, we have to understand that we're not operating in a vacuum, and the impact that this issue has on people's lives is tremendous. I'm just going to read a couple of statistics and then go forward with the rest of the report on the committee. And then, definitely I would love to hear from the other board members, and we can open this up. And I will ask that Robert's Rules of Order be suspended just a little bit, because I think it's important to really have a conversation about this from people and even from members of the audience. So this report, again, is called Foreclosed, and as we know that we are in a real serious state in terms of foreclosures and what that has meant. But of course, it is going to affect various communities much more differently than it will affect others. This report came from the United for a Fair Economy. They do a lot of reports in terms of the financial impact that certain social issues have on various communities. But key findings, they estimate that the total loss of wealth for people of color to be between $164 billion and $213 billion for the subprime loans taken during the past 8 years. They believe that this represents the greatest loss of wealth for people of color in modern U.S. history. Another statistic, based on improvements in median household net worth before the current crisis from 1982 to 2004, it would take 594 more years for Black/African Americans to achieve parity with whites. The current crisis is likely to make it take much longer. Home ownership for the rates of Blacks and African Americans compared to whites already started to take back recent gains. At the current rate of improvement from 1970 to 2006, parity will not be achieved for another 5,423 years. There's also statistics in here in terms of how this has impacted Latino people and other various communities of color. But I just wanted to at least start with those few statistics. So it is so important to understand when we talk about these issues, we're not talking in a vacuum. Just to begin, one of the major mandates of the Pacifica Foundation, and I'll just read this very briefly, is that the foundation is to engage in any activity that shall contribute to a lasting understanding between nations and between individuals of all nations, races, creeds, and colors, to gather and disseminate information on the causes of conflict between any and all of such groups, and through any and all means compatible with the purposes of this foundation, to promote the study of political and economic problems and the causes of religious, philosophical, and racial antagonism. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote that the problem of the 20th century is the color line. And yet we know that has been the problem of every century since the inception of America, or Europeans coming to this land. And we certainly know that it's also the problem of the 21st century. This century finds us facing a resurgence in news hangings, burnings. There have been church burnings. We know that there are issues pertaining to border issues, and always they mean the Mexican border. They never mean the Canadian border. And we know that there have been serious repercussions on people's lives. We know that NAFTA has affected and began to just create a crisis of such huge proportions in which we always say people are running into this country, but we never talk about why somebody would choose to leave their homeland and to risk coming into this country to work for peanuts because of the economic crisis. And we also know that we also have started this century with the war in the Middle East, which, believe me, are also affecting other people of color. We heard a lot of comments this morning, and I don't have to tell people about the crises that WBAI is facing, not just WBAI, it's throughout the network. And we have learned this much, that although we talk about, oh, we're progressive and we're this and we're that, We are not separate from the community that we preach to or that we broadcast to. We are that community. And we bring to it all of the problems, all of the reflections, all of the antagonisms that's in the community at home. We are a microcosm. This committee was, has some interesting history, and it was founded based on, well, you can get a sense of why it was founded this morning, but it was established, it's called the Committee to Investigate Allegations of Racism and Sexism, and it was established with part of it to be that mission. And the very fact, I could be mistaken, but I don't know if any other committee was met with as much scrutiny and debate as this committee was. And I'm just being very honest, and oftentimes the debate and the support of it ran across the color line. And some of the things that were said about it, and I just want to be clear, when this committee was established, there's no individual's name that was attached to it, although there were reasons that made it, that there were reasons in terms of why it came to being, but there was no names attached to it in the motion. And yet it has not investigated anyone at all. There's been no investigations brought before it, and that's primarily because it's not fully set out in terms of processes, which is another reason why we felt it was so important to have this discussion. And yet it has been compared to HUAC, which stands for the House of American Activities Committee, HUAC, the Salem witch hunts, and just the irony of being compared to those events is that not one person of color that I know had anything to do with those events when they happened in history. When we were first, just in terms of getting to the report, we were established in 2006. We were not able to have very many meetings because initially there was a move to rescind the committee, and then the battle existed throughout the year. And there was a motion that was put forward after the motion passed to establish at the next meeting, there was a motion calling for its rescission. But so primarily a good part of that year in terms of the committee, we were not able to meet very much. But we eventually, most of it was about campaigning for the establishment of the committee to keep it in existence. But there were some very, very critical things that came out of the debates surrounding that committee. And I believe in other members on the board who know more than I do, please feel free to correct me. But one of the things was we had some of the first anti-racism training for board members of the directors of the board. And we had a training in New York with the People's Institute. And we had, not in that order, I don't think, and we had one in Los Angeles that involved Dr. Shirley Better. And, so there was some very good things came out of those very serious discussions. And also, the board recognized that there was a need to put a line item in the budget for training for board members for various reasons. Happily to report, in 2007, we were able to lead with a lot more regularity, and we did achieve consensus at most of those meetings. And again, the effort in terms of working with my fellow committee members was really, really very, very important. Some of the things that we were able to do, we recommended, we passed this recommendation, and this is in the packet that I passed out with you. But a recommendation for a code of conduct as it pertains to issues of racism and sexism. And we submitted that we are I don't think that the governance, and this is not to at all point fingers at any committee, but just to have real conversations about some of the impediments that we might be facing in terms of the work that we're trying to do. So we did pass that as a recommendation for the governance committee to incorporate in the code of conduct. And we're still waiting for a code of conduct to be passed, and perhaps we'll know more about what's going on with that. Another thing that we did, a really rough draft guideline was presented to the committee. I don't even want to give the illusion that it's something that there's like unified consensus around, but this is just to inform the report. But that there was, a rough draft set of guidelines that was put forward for consideration in terms of processes in terms of how this committee should be set up and should be established. And there's been some discussion about it, but we know we get consensus on it. It shows that we still have a lot of work, a lot of research to do in this area. But I would say that for the most part, most of the discussion with the committee really centered around really having an in-depth understanding, not just settling, but passing some motion or saying, well, we put this into effect, but really, really trying to help to move the board, help to find ways to move the board, move the Pacifica, because this most primarily deals with behavior as it pertains to board members, local and the national board, and how to really help to move this network and people on the board, ourselves included, toward a very profound understanding of what this issue of racism is and the role and part that we all have to play in and the self-examination that is required, and the maturity and the honesty that it takes to really talk about this, not just preach it, but to talk about it and to examine it. And so the issue of training was a very much a large part of the discussion that we had. We talked about the possibility of online training, but not as a substitute for in-person training or workshops, nothing like that, but in terms of just as an addendum to, so to speak. Some of the people, one of the problems with doing this kind of work is that you don't really have, in my opinion, a whole lot of concrete examples in society that you can look and say, oh, well, they did it and they were so great, and boom, we can borrow from this. You really don't have a whole lot of that. And with the new structure of Pacifica, there's also not a whole lot of structure in place when it comes to certain kind of things. So we're starting almost in a vacuum in that respect. But there are some institutions or some foundations that have started doing some tremendous work in anti-racism training, and we've been looking at some of them. One of them is the People's Institute. I know Evelyn has been, and I'm so sorry because the name escapes me, but I will ask Evelyn to speak about some of the foundations that she has worked with. And we had put forward a proposal because we said, well, we need to start doing more anti-racism training, not just anti-racism, but also sexism. And we were thinking about, we had put this proposal initially for it to be starting with the first in-person meeting in New York for various reasons. And one of the institutions that we were looking at is the People's Institute, one of the institutions that conducted the anti-racism training in 2006. And for various reasons, not the least being that there has been so much, controversy and so many of the elections in terms of the directors at the time when we put forward this motion was not really settled. And because, you have a new board coming in, there's a whole lot of training, we thought that, well, the time would be better served to maybe have the training a little later on in the year, maybe at the next in-person board meeting, but to use this meeting to talk about a real dialogue about some of the issues we are facing, and also some of the impediments, so to speak, that has come up with our work on the committee. And just to get into some of the challenges or impediments that we have faced, the word investigation, because that brought up a whole lot of things, but you have to look at this. Earlier today, somebody said that I said something to this person when he approached me in Newark, and I don't run away from the statements I've made or positions that I've taken on racism, and I take very strong ones. And he was correct with what he said, but what's important about this is to understand it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So when we talk about the word investigate, it was about how do you really get down to the bottom of what happened. Somebody says, so-and-so accused me of doing this, and if they say it's because of racism, well, we have to talk about it. And we have to look at patterns, and we have to do those kind of things. So toward being able to establish something like that, it's important to have very, very fair processes in place. It's important to work with the HR director. We certainly don't, although the scope of this committee pertains to board members, but we certainly don't want to do anything that would be in violation of the manual, with our HR manual, certainly anything that would be in violation with workplace laws. So that was very important to work with the HR director. And initially in 2006, Yolanda Thomas, I think that was her last name. She was the HR director for Pacifica in 2006, and she was more than willing to work with us. But at the end of the year, or either at the beginning of 2007, she left the foundation for various reasons. And so we have not really had we have an HR consultant, but we really don't have an HR director in place that we can say, look, we want to work with you and talk with you and how can you help us, monitor these kind of things. And there's also been various changes in terms of the executive director position, but these are all things in terms of the foundation that we think, working with these people and certainly working with Foundation Council and certainly expressed interest in working with us. But these are some of the things that have presented, I'll say, impediments somewhat to really establishing the guidelines, because everybody is so concerned, and rightfully so, within the committee, with the process and with fairness. But again, it's beyond far more than process and fairness. It is also about helping to move these conversations to a level where they really need to go, and helping to really just deal realistically and forthrightfully with the things that are going on. And, and they're serious. And at this point, I will ask some of the other committee members if they would like to comment and to maybe talk about some of the work and things that they have been doing as well, or whatever they might like to add to us.
I guess I can start off. I just want to very briefly say that when the committee got together, one of the first things that we decided was that this was not about punitive or punishment. This committee was put together in order to really address the very serious issues of racism and sexism that present themselves within every meeting, within every signal area. There are always instances of racist behavior, prejudicial behavior, bigoted behavior, all kinds of things. And one of the things that I believe very strongly is that sometimes things are done out of ignorance, and sometimes it's willfully done. In order to make sure which one you're dealing with, you educate your people. And you do that by having workshops and giving people information so that they then operate within a context of being informed. And if behavior continues, then you can decide that it's willful. Because once people understand and know better, the expectation, of course, is that they will do better. So if that behavior doesn't change, then you know that it is a willful act, and you can address it in that manner. We have a lot of issues within Pacifica that deal with lawsuits because of sometimes people not being trained properly, not getting the HR piece, those kinds of things. What we have done at KPFT is actively, as an LSB, use money that we received through a grant for board training to address those issues. We've had board retreat just this month, in fact, to deal with the issues of healing racism. And the Center for Healing Racism conducted the workshop. It was for 2 days because it's also not a topic that you can deal with in an hour. It's an ongoing process, and you're not going to straighten it out in a 2-day workshop. But what you hope is that people come away with a sense of understanding the dynamic of the effect that racism has on not just the person that's on the receiving end, but also on the person who's doing the act or committing the act, because it affects both parties. And it affects this entire country in terms of how people of color are able to live their life every day, and how devalued people are on a day-to-day basis, willfully in many cases, and how institutionalized racism is. And until we understand the depth of that, we really cannot speak to whether I'm a racist, a bigot, prejudiced, whether you are or whatever. We have to really understand the paradigm that within the American culture, racism is an integral part of everyday life, period. And denial of that is what makes us unable to communicate. And so what I believe this board has agreed to do is ongoing training, because you have to build on, you don't want to just have one workshop. We've talked about making sure that our trainings are connected and that they build on each other so that it's ongoing. And so that is what has come out of this committee over the last year and a half, 2 years, is this committee has really tried to not be an instrument for punitive attacks, which is what I believe people viewed it as initially, but a vehicle to really talk about the importance of putting tools in place that can be utilized across the network to help heal a very deep, gaping wound that affects us and prevents us from being able to operate at our highest level.
I will next call on A.C. Bird, who has a long history in fighting civil rights and fighting for civil rights, I should say. He's out of WPFW.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just wanted to, the other members of the committee has cited, that is I want to thank the Pacifica Foundation for adopting this committee, because it was a clear recognition that these kinds of isms have existed and paralyzed America for a long time. And 88 years ago, there was no, women did not have rights that we now address. I would say, since while we had some limited forms of that in the 1860s for African Americans, but in the main, it was 1964 and 1965 that we got the vote rights, both the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act. Yeah, sure. So there's been adjustments in the U.S. society to try to address these questions. And we're all a part of that society. And so it's no accident that we needed to address this question ourselves. And I think the one thing that I want to say is that I think objectively we have to understand that we live in a culture that's permeated by racism and sexism. It's nothing that's in individual heads, except that we are influenced by that. We're all influenced by that. I, as an African American, need to be educated on the question of sexism. And the larger society need to be educated on racism. It permeates and is structured within society. And I think it would be an illusion to assume that you don't manifest it. I used to think that I didn't manifest it, but then I learned through struggle that I do. Right, exactly. It took me a while. Thanks to the struggling progressive women's movement. And so I think it was a commendable thing by this foundation to do this, and I would hope that we all would understand very clearly that we need this kind of training if we're going to be agents of social change. I think what Pacifica mission lays out is the fact that they wanted to establish an institution that would address the issues of social change on the issue of racism, sexism, and other issues that it addressed. And so I think it's very important that we have adopted this. And I want to thank the committee itself, and particularly Lisa, who is our president, the chair of this committee, who's done a very wonderful job, and all of its members have done a wonderful job in doing so. I have to say, the political animal, that looking at the selection, we see that people who've been considered progressive, far beyond their scope, is now engaged in a race-baiting strategy to win the elections, namely Bill and Hillary Clinton. And so we can see that it continues to manifest itself. We can't even talk about the Bush administration. We know they're unashamedly just, practice racism all the time, as a sport almost. So that's all I want to say. I just want to say that I hope we continue this and continue the training, as Lisa has pointed out. And because I think if we're going to be an agent of social change, that's our choice, then we have to educate ourselves before we can help educate the public. And in some instances, we got to learn from the public. It's a dialectical kind of thing. And so let's continue working on that. I think we've already mandated in this board that we would try to have it, this discussion at every meeting, have some form of training. For money reasons and other reasons, we haven't had a program like Lisa mentioned in New York, and Evelyn then had in Texas. But I think we ought to pay attention to this and try to make sure that there's room on the program wherever we have these events and in-person meetings, that we engage in this discussion so we can better ourselves and become an agent of change. Thank you.
I'm also going to ask Saul Randhawa, who was he was the vice chair last year. He's kind of in limbo right now. I don't know how to address it, but he was the vice chair last year of the board, and he finished as the chair. And I would like to, he's from KPFA. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that the time that I've spent here on this committee has been probably one of the most productive undertakings that I have encountered here for a long time. Fully well knowing and to deal with something so substantial an issue that's embedded in the psyche of this country and is manifested at levels that we don't even comprehend. And then to try to come and educate ourselves and make ourselves sensitive to such an issue at a deeper level so that we can move forward as a collective body, it's a tremendous undertaking. First of all, to begin with, there's no matter what rules, what kind of philosophical arguments you put forth, there's always a counterpoint to that. So those who have experienced a deep legacy of injustice in a nation over a long period of time will fully well appreciate, on my behalf or anybody else who have not seen or encountered such a deep kind of legacy, it's not very easy. So sometimes we just overlook it, sometimes we are insensitive to things we do, and words we utter, and not fully realizing what the impact of that is. And then to on top of that, how do you go about correcting it? Whether, I think Dr. Batoon said that being punitive, that's not going to solve it, and I agree. I think that it's kind of a question of raising up consciousness to a point where that punitive element does not enter the picture. I think that only then, I think we can elevate ourselves and our whole network to a level where, we become utterly sensitive to other people's historical events that are created where they are. So for me, it has been a growing experience on this committee itself, and then we try to come up with some kind of common elements that could be put into our governance committee and under code of conduct. What kind of, how do we approach it, and how do we try to cover that in a generalized sort of a way in the code of conduct? It's tremendous undertaking. So, but we'll try. I think our governance committee this coming year hopefully will address that element of it, the racism and sexism part of it. Also, it will try to hopefully come up with some kind of training program that will address these issues. So all I got to say is that I myself am educating to this and making myself aware and conscious of some things that I do and say, and not fully realizing its impact, and I'll try to develop my own sensitivity towards that. So I think for me it's been a learning experience on this thing. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa, can I raise an issue about the agenda here? This item was originally scheduled for 2 hours, and I don't want to cut it down to 45 minutes. I think that we need to extend it, but we have some matters that we do have to take care of now that are time sensitive. First, we have public comment included in this item. So I'm proposing that be started at 5 p.m. and go to 5:30. And then at 5:30, we have immediate concern that we need to deal with in closed session. So after the public comment, then we can clear the room, have a closed session for 1/2 hour, then we'll open up the doors and we'll hold our officer elections. And then break for dinner, and then we can come back to this at probably 7:30. It's 4:57.
I mean, that's fine with me. I mean, we can go to, public comment now, and then.
Oh no. Wait a minute. It's worse than I thought. I think we may need to go into executive session immediately, because a member has to leave at 6, and this will be vital for her to participate in the election of officers. And then I think we may have to have public comment. Should we resume after? Resume after and have public comment afterwards, so that everybody doesn't.
May I just ask one question for
Yeah.
clarity? Because of the public comment, and then I'm open, but was it supposed to be comment that was incorporated into this?
It was, yes, it was agendized to be part of this item, but we can extend this item.
No, I'm for coming back, but I was just going to make a suggestion in terms of how we could possibly do it to incorporate public comment, but to just, make it more like conversation and dialogue. We can definitely break it down.
Okay, all right. I'm very sorry we have an immediate concern. We do need to go into a closed session, and it's vital because some of our members are leaving. Thank you very much.
So when do we come back? When do we come back?
Sherry Gimbalin.
Well, I don't thank for the nomination. I do think that the Pacifica Radio Network is a very precious resource, and I think that, I've said this several times today, this country is not heading towards a police state, it is a police state. And I think before the door is locked upon us, Pacifica still has the opportunity to achieve its potential and make a difference in the course of this country and the course that it takes. I have been involved with Pacifica Radio for more than 20 years. I was a plaintiff in one of the 3 lawsuits that were filed and brought against the renegade board in the late 90s. I think that Pacifica has demonstrated its ability, and it's important to this country, just looking at the spike in audience at the beginning of the first Gulf War and after the second Gulf War. Our numbers shot through the ceiling, and I think that we can achieve those numbers again, particularly because we're entering the World War III, to quote the guy who's sitting in the White House right now, and we are facing the 2008 election, and I think that Pacifica can play a part in that. I believe that I can contribute towards assisting Pacifica and this board in directing its attention toward making this network what it can be.
Thank you. We can go to balloting. If you all have pads of paper, what I recommend you do is, since this is an IRB election, even though there's no possibility that a second ranked vote could make any difference, to conform to IRB, I suggest you write the names of both candidates down on a piece of paper.
Thank you. Give it to me. What's real? Oh, sure. Nice job.
Oh, man, just.
I gotta go, team. Thank you very much.
Why don't you do it all? I just want to go and put the battery in.
See you on our next in-person call.
Probably maybe Monday night.
Yeah, I know.
Monday night at 10.
You know?
Observers?
How do you want me to do that? You do that. You do that.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right, well, in that case, I'll shuffle.
Except that, the only problem is, to do that, I don't know.
Yes, sir, right here.
Just read it to somebody who can tell.
So maybe you should, maybe not creative.
Okay, sit over here.
Why don't you have Dan do it? Why don't you have Dan
Yeah,
do
Dan
it?
do it, please. Where's Dan?
Where's Dan?
Sit down here.
Yeah.
Take the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, here.
Recorded? Yeah, let me play around this.
Right, so I just.
Yeah, just so they can separate them out, that's it.
Let's film him doing this so we don't get any cheating.
Jack, we use this time usefully by maybe reminding board members to pass around the committee sign-up sheet so that tomorrow morning we're ready to hold that election as well.
Here's somebody who changed their mind. Oh, I know, they did
Yeah,
today?
we have
Well, they told them to write down both
committee
candidates.
sign-up sheet.
Okay,
In order to
first they
fully
told them to write down
populate our
both.
committees, we really need each
And now
member
we
to
get
join
IRAs.
at least two
That'll be
committees.
fun. How much?
I don't see anyone from BAI in this sign-up. Oh, it hasn't come your way? Yeah, how could you have not had the sheet file? That doesn't make any sense.
What if it's a 2? Oh, that's a 1. Oh, yeah, it's.
Okay, I appreciate that, it's wonderful.
Spelled it differently. So she said that. Let's try it again. Wow, all those just wait glass.
We need to know who's the chair before we go into the vice chair.
8 to 7, is that right? Well, I'll tell you, I'll count them again. All gonna be down to the last ballot. No. Okay, so it's not a tie. All right. You don't want the numbers, right? You just want to know the winner? Yeah, and then we'll reserve the ballots. It's Sherry Gimbley. Congratulations.
The winner of the election is Sherry Gimbelman, is our newly elected chair.
Thank you.
Sherry, yes.
Now, yeah, we need to preserve the election.
I'm sorry, Jack.
Wonderful.
Jack, you didn't have to vote quantity?
Well, if the body requests it, I'll tell you why in our LS meetings we don't. In some occasions, and I don't have any idea how this vote went, but on some occasions there will be a very lopsided vote, and it could be embarrassing to one candidate or another. However, I'm fully supportive of disclosure, putting the results of the miracle count in the minutes, and that's the only reason that I hesitate. But I wouldn't, oppose it vigorously if there's a feeling that board needs to know.
I'd like to know.
We're talking about transparency and honesty and integrity and ethics.
Right on, brother. Let him have it.
I can put it to a vote.
Let him have it.
But there is one who left, number 2. She voted before.
And now you have some of the people who are.
I mean, I do believe that the numerical results being missed.
Because she
We
left.
should have a telephone board.
Yes.
Report the
She,
results,
yeah,
so I
she
don't
answered.
really feel that it's necessary to report that.
What is his question? Does that mean it doesn't add up right, or it does?
It's not going to change. No, okay.
What happened?
Jack, it's not that I have any opinion one way or the other, but every board meeting that I've been part of, there's been elections, it's just routinely.
Oh, okay, all right. So we've established a different custom. Okay, well, is there any objection then to announcing the numerical results?
Okay, it was 12 votes for Sherry and 8 votes for Evan.
Okay.
I think the point, I don't know. Yeah, okay. Nominations for vice chair are now open.
Point of information. Yes. How do we preserve these ballots? Do you have an envelope I can put them in or something?
I'll get some envelopes from the.
Yeah, get some envelopes.
That's fine.
Okay, nominations for vice chair. Ambrose. Effia, you accept?
I accept.
Vice chair.
Who?
Any other nominations for vice chair? Wendy,
Jack Van Aiken.
I'll decline. Any other nominations for vice chair?
Who wants to be secretary?
We don't know, well,
Jack.
she's coming back. Wendy?
I'd nominate her.
Well, she's been nominated. Yeah.
We can call her,
Hold the election. Yeah, she got her cell phone.
She'd probably accept.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? We have Effia, we have Dr. Doon.
And never mind, I got them.
Okay, well, we can go ahead and hold the election then. And, well, we can, it's not required, it's not required that she accept the whole election. Yeah.
Okay.
You can nominate someone, you can hold the election, and if they decline, then I think you will hold the election. Yeah. If they win and they decline the office, then, okay, they're on board.
You don't have an autofocus?
Yeah. Okay, nominations for vice chair are closed. And the candidates are Effia and Evelyn. Effia, would you care to make a statement?
That's all right. We've heard from her already.
We've heard from you already. Okay, you don't have to.
I don't understand why there's all this mumbling and undertone. We started out with a moment of candor and an effort to be intellectually and emotionally and politically honest. And we completed the first phase of that. Could we not sully it with initiating another wave that's going to wind up with a whole bunch of confusion and a whole bunch of rumors? Now, if the requirement is that the person be present and approve, then that's the requirement. And it's about time that we started operating based on principles and on rules as opposed to personalities and slights. So before we proceed, I would ask, what are the rules? Does the person have to be present? Not to mention generally a common courtesy of having agreed to run.
Well, my understanding of Robert's rules is that the candidate does not need to be present. I can check.
Don't talk to me, talk to the rest of the people in the group. I had always understood that the person had to agree to be a candidate.
The nominations are closed on one name, Mr. Chair. Unless somebody in this room has somebody.
So how many minutes does this give? Oh, an hour.
Well, that was critical.
The batteries will give you more power. Like you have 2 hour batteries or 3 hour batteries. You want to be an extra one. Oh, I know.
I'll move that.
Right.
1 second.
What is the rule, Mr. Chair, for you?
What time do you have, by the way? Something to do with what is it? What time do you have? I do.
Okay. Okay, okay.
I decided to go with her. But I'll get started.
She did accept.
She did accept?
Yeah.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah. She accepted. Okay, well, that's okay, Evelyn has accepted, so,
What you were waiting for, Mr. Chair?
pardon me?
What you were waiting for?
Amber?
Instead of acting on the motion, what, before the House?
We're gonna go to an election.
No.
No, I was looking for, at Robert's rules for the rule. I mean, I believe that a candidate can be nominated in absentia and you can hold the election. And then if they win, you notify them, and it's a question of whether or not they accept or decline at that point. I was looking for chapter and verse, I was unable to find it. But she has accepted the nomination. So we can vote along the same procedure. It's Evelyn Bethune and Thea Mongaza.
That's right one. That's right one.
Does anybody need to take
Start at one end.
I want to see a bill for this.
Don't hand me 2 again.
He's not gonna.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Lord?
not counting the second round either.
Sure.
We went over that.
I don't want any more
George,
problems.
how many do you have this time?
Call her Donna.
I didn't think they'd buy it this time.
Oh, you bet.
She's not being sat on. It's all right. We only have 2 candidates.
What for?
It's all right.
The treasurer is elected by
L and a Y.
By the finance.
So the only other election after this is secretary.
That's one of a lot.
This is more.
I know.
They would need STV. They would need
Yeah, we
STV.
should do STD for that secretary's position, because everybody at the table is nominated.
Everybody who didn't get one of the other jobs.
Looks like a close race here.
Do we have to work together?
No, I can't do that.
just got rid of Ada, so now we good.
It's funny how things,
Various spellings.
come back around.
Who was that other guy's name? You guys had a committee, Miguel Maldonado, we'll have to bring him back.
He disappeared.
Well, running the lawsuit, we had a committee. It was Sherry, David, and this guy in New York named Miguel Maldonado. And you had a committee of 3 that had 5 factions.
Right, we did.
Here's another one.
You know, Pete Ramsey was my next door neighbor. So
He was the reluctant combatant.
all he did was sit on his front porch,
Wow.
right next to my porch, all day. Yeah, he was.
You know Bramson?
Yeah. Wow.
What happened to that?
You know, he didn't put up with the
So 13, 14, so it should be 19 votes altogether. Yeah. The winner is Effia. All right.
And what's the count?
What's the count? The count.
Speak on the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Speak into the mic.
I'm sorry, I forgot there were other people listening. Effia is elected as the vice chair of this body by a vote of 14 to 5. All right.
Nominations for the office of secretary are open. Bob.
I nominate Mary Berg of KPFA, and I spoke to her on the phone a couple of days ago, and she is more than happy to serve again as she did all of last year.
I second that.
Mary Berg.
I second Berg.
Under the bylaws, a person, a candidate for secretary does not have to be a member of this board.
That's right. Excellent. Okay, any other nominations for secretary?
Well, I was just going to suggest, you know, this has been one of the problems of the National Board from 2004 through 2007. In 2004, we had a very good secretary. The PNB was reminded at all times of what they had done, and we were able to have a much productive year. After that, we started having trouble. It's an incredible commitment for anyone to be the secretary, especially as a volunteer. And it shows in the product that comes out. I hate to say that. You know,
Is this a nomination, Wendy?
Well, this is a plea to this board to, that what we need to do is hire a professional secretary. The way we conduct our business is, it's too much for a volunteer to do it.
Wendy,
And
whereas your motion is timely, I'm going to rule it out of order because nominations are open for the office to elect a secretary, but you can raise this motion at any time.
so we're going to have one volunteer, and then I'm going to have to move to fire her for somebody that we pay.
Well, I don't know that it's going to be that traumatic. Generally, people rarely take on a job such as secretary. It's a tremendous sacrifice. So anyway, so we can deal with this item of business on another occasion, but I do think nominations for secretary need to be included. Are there any other nominations for secretary?
I nominate George Ryder.
Okay. Nominations for secretary. We're getting ready to close.
I move that we postpone the election of officers until the next.
You want to postpone the
Election of secretary
Okay.
until finance committee can conduct the financial impacts.
George, was that a declaration, or were you just surprised at your nomination?
A financial impact statement on hiring a secretary? Or are you not serious?
No. No, go ahead.
All right,
That's it.
I don't hear a second to your motion. AC?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
You second her motion? Yes. Is it a serious motion, or, I mean, it sounds serious, but it seems.
No, you had nomination.
Wendy?
I second the motion.
Point of order. Yes, take your point of order.
Is that a motion? I mean, is that a secretary or a nomination? Is that a secretary nomination?
What is your question?
My question is, that when you
Accept
say
the
that.
nomination.
Accept the nomination.
No, I don't.
Wendy, Mary Bird, are there any other nominations for secretary?
There's only one nomination, that's it.
Okay, nominations for secretary are going once, going twice. Nominations for secretary are closed. Follow the same procedure of balloting. You only need to put your favorite down. No need to rank your least favorite.
So more than one nomination?
You nominate herself.
Excuse me. Half the board doesn't realize that there's been a second person nominated, and it was Wendy, and she accepted. So there are two candidates for the position, Mary Bird and Wendy.
I'll start at the other end. Yeah, that's right. Gotta be fair and balanced.
Okay, make up your mind. Well, it's a do-it-yourself ballot.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Determine the intent of the voters there.
All right. She did it.
Listen to the stream on the board, waiting for the ballots to be counted. After the results, we're going to make your dinner. When we come back, we'll have public comment.
Somebody said that earlier.
Then what?
Okay, public comment? We will presumably continue the races on the sexism discussion and go to the web report, our Pacifica's web designer, and then after that, the digital distribution report from Rob Robbins.
It's a big sheet.
Do we have to be out of here at 9:30 again?
9:30 again, yes.
Wow.
The new secretary of the board is Mary Bird by a vote of 11 to 8.
Welcome to 2008.
Okay, if there's no objection, we'll break for dinner and we'll be back in 1 hour.
You like a secretary?
It's
I mean,
7:20,
treasurer? You don't like
and,
a treasurer?
No, we don't, that comes from our committee.
Oh, I see.
No, I don't want that.
So you only have 3 hours?
I don't want it, I just want to sit. This year, I just want to sit.
I noticed.
I don't want to hear it. Yeah, wonderful. No, no, no.
Oh, it goes about 2 minutes into the day.
That adds the level, the size so everybody has good. I've done that exercise meetings when suddenly people forget.
You have to do any IRBs?
When people start behaving in the and the back and forth, and they say, oh, we should have back and forth conversation, the back and forth conversation is like riding the wave. When I first started cheering in my cheering meetings, it was always to me, like even the first time I did it, I was like, it's like cheating. It's like you know when to bring this one in and bring that one in. It's musical. It's totally musical activity. It's not so much about work. And you know that you were because some folks want even at the level of reality, you're still listening. And it doesn't work even more to fight, and they're